Here's a troubleshooting tip related to the ProLogic series and an error that you might see called fail to link with lock. So what I have here is a ProLogic series entry pad. You can tell that because it has an LCD screen. These entry pads must operate with a lock that is in digital mode. The lock can be set in either digital mode or analog mode. It must be in digital mode to work with this particular entry pad, the ProLogic or ScanLogic series. This keypad or entry pad is a SafeLogic series. The lock must be in analog mode to work with the SafeLogic series. And the difference essentially is the way it communicates. When I enter my code with a SafeLogic series, I'm actually sending voltage across to the lock. The lock then determines or interprets the voltage being sent as a number. If it gets the right number sequence, then the lock opens. With a digital system, the entry pad sends information to the lock, and the lock and the entry pad talk back and forth in order to determine if it's the right code and if access can be granted at this time. So this is kind of two-way communication. This is one-way communication. So here's a situation that some people run into when they're beginning to use our product, and they'll get a message on the screen that says fail to link. Here's what happens. We know that this lock is currently set in analog mode because it opened with this SafeLogic system. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect it to our ProLogic, which requires a lock that's in digital mode. And when I do that, I'll run a code. And what you'll see there is it says it's verified. It's the right code, but it says fail to link with lock. Now that can mean one of two things. It also says please reset lock. So what that's doing is that's going to cycle a message back and forth so that you know what to do. But essentially what you've got to do is put this lock into digital mode. And we do that using the reset button on the back of the lock here. So I'm going to just let this go to standby mode. And we will begin to reset this lock. So here's how that works. Using a paperclip, I will depress the reset button, which is underneath the reset hole, inside the reset hole. Above the hole, you'll find the embossed word reset. So I'm going to first of all depress that button, the reset button, 3 times by just clicking down on the reset button underneath that hole with a paperclip. And you press down on there 3 times just in order to dissipate any latent energy that's still in the capacitors of the lock. So now what you do, and this is a bit tricky, you press and hold and you connect the entry pad to the lock body and hold another 5 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you release. There's no indication from the lock that is now set in digital mode, but when you run a code, it'll validate as the correct code and the lock will open. So that is a common thing that happens when people aren't familiar with our product and they haven't switched this lock over to digital mode. They've paired it with an entry pad that requires a digital lock. They get that fail to link. Just do a simple reset and that'll now always pair this lock with this entry pad. This lock is now in digital mode. And what also happens during this process, you saw that I held that down for another 5 seconds. What that does is, the first thing it does is turns it into digital mode because it sees the digital entry pad. The second thing it does is downloads any programming that is in this entry pad to the lock. So if I did this and I'd already set my supercode or my user codes in this lock, it would download that information into the lock so that I don't enter the default codes when I do this. I would enter whatever supercode or user code was in this entry pad prior to me setting it up in digital mode with this lock. So that's a common thing that happens. Fail to link is the message. It'll tell you to reset, and that's how you do a reset. That's the ProLogic system. And this will work with any of our ProLogic or ScanLogic series entry pads that have to have the lock in digital mode. So that's fail to link.